Hi, welcome back to What's Wrong with This Picture. We are talking today about 5 tips for the new owner of a DSLR.
That's right. Yep.
And so we've gone through number 1 and number 2. What's tip number 3, sir?
Well, tip number 3 is use your viewfinder. Now, you know, you've had...
Isn't that kind of go without saying, use your viewfinder? Or maybe I'm not following you.
No, you've used point-and-shoot cameras.
Sure.
There are some, many of them, that don't have a viewfinder.
Oh, yeah.
They have that screen in the back.
Right, right.
And people who use point-and-shoot cameras for a long period of time actually become so accustomed to holding the camera up and looking in the back at the window there to frame their picture, that when they get a DSLR, they are looking for, well, how do I do this? And there is what they call live view on DSLRs, or at least on most of them,
right?
In which you can put the image onto the screen and back.
Sure.
It does it when you're doing video with these new DSLRs, but you can do it with still pictures too.
But why do that if you have that? What do you need the viewfinder for?
Well, there's a lot of information that you can gain from that viewfinder. You get a better look, a shielded look at what you're actually going to get on,
which is really good if you're out in bright sun, obviously.
Yeah, but in the frame, you're going to be able to see the borders of the frame, and if you read your manual, you'll find out if that viewfinder gives you 98% of the picture or 100% of the picture, but you'll be able to see this is what I'm sure to get. And then at the same time, while looking and framing the picture, you also have the opportunity to look at the focal point and or focal points if you're using multiple points, and you can position those so when you push the button halfway down, you get the focusing done correctly on the part that you want in focus. And then on top of that, at the bottom of most of these screens, or in some cases on one side, you actually get other information like the shutter speed that you're going to use, the aperture that you're using, and even ISO and exposure adjustments that there's actually the meter in there that you can see if you're manually setting these various adjustments. You can see if you're actually on a well-exposed picture as opposed to way underexposed or way over.
So a lot of good reasons for using that viewfinder, and in fact, what you're saying too is that sometimes the screen on the back is not an entirely accurate picture of the picture that you're actually going to be getting.
Well, right, and you can't tell from that picture, by the way, whether you're really in focus or not.
Yeah.
You look at it and say, "Ah, it looks pretty good," and you take the picture.
Right.
You get home, you put it in your software that we've been talking, you know, that you use to adjust the picture, and all of a sudden you discover it's out of focus.
Well, what about now? I wear glasses, and you do too. How do you get around that?
Well, actually, there is a little dial on the side of your camera. I'll use this one; it's easier to pick up.
Okay.
Right here, and it adjusts what's called the diopter
on that camera.
Oh, on this one, yeah.
There we go. Yeah, it's a dial right there. Okay.
Yeah, and there's this little dial, and it allows you to put this up to your eye and adjust the focus within the viewfinder.
Okay.
So that if you're wearing glasses and you take them off to do this, you can adjust the diopter.
Compensate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And usually there's a rubber gasket-like piece that sticks out from behind. Here's one here. This has a little soft rubber area here that if you put that up against your lens of your glasses, you can it fits so that you can actually see.
Right. Okay. All right. Good. All right. So what's tip number 4?
Well, tip number 4 is zoom with your feet.
I'm getting so that I don't zoom anywhere with my feet. What are you talking about?
Well, we both probably should, as a matter of fact.
Probably
I don't know.
Idea.
But it all amounts to get closer to your subject by moving yourself, not by relying on a zoom lens.
Okay.
First of all, and we'll talk about this in a moment, you may or may not have a zoom lens to zoom with, but even if you do, sometimes it's you end up with a better picture, a better quality picture, if you make yourself walk up on what it is that you're trying to take a picture of.
We got some examples of where that works in the next segment too.
Right, yeah, exactly. But the fact of the matter is that you need to remain a little mobile in composing your picture don't always rely on that zoom to get you where you're going to go. If you can actually walk up to the subject, get as close as you can or as you need to. Now there are times when
you get more detail that way,
Yeah.
And you get more light, don't you?
Well, yes, because the more you zoom, the less aperture opening you actually end up getting, the less light goes through the camera.
Right.
So this camera, for example, starts out at f3.5 when I'm at 28 millimeters. But when I zoom out to 300, now I'm at 4.0.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, 5.6.
Okay, so you've lost light.
I've lost light by zooming all the way out. So
Right.
that may be a factor right there for walking in. Now, at times with a zoom lens, you've got it because you're shooting wild animals, or you're at a point where you can't walk up to the
Don't
subject.
get close to the bear. That's your tip, right?
You'll usually
Tip number
only-
5
yeah,
is don't
you'll-
get close to the bear.
Don't do it more than once.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
In any case, and there's nothing wrong with that kit lens that you got with this new DSLR.
Okay.
You got I don't know, an 18 to 55 millimeter little zoom.
What we sometimes call the normal lens, or is that they sometimes provide a zoom?
Now these days they put a little zoom lens on
Short
there.
telephoto type deal, yeah.
And there is a tendency for pros to discount those as useless. Never mind, no, we aren't going to use that. We're going to use something expensive.
Yeah, right, yeah, okay. Yeah.
But actually, there's not a heck of a lot wrong with a kit lens that comes with the camera.
Okay.
So it just doesn't have that wide zoom usually, that the long zoom.
All right, tip number 5.
Number 5, learn about lenses.
Okay.
All right, now you've got this DSLR. You've had this point and shoot camera up till now. You just bought this, and you probably spent a little bit of money on this thing. And so now you've got all these capabilities. And we now can, for the first time, if you were previously using point and shoot, you now can take this lens off and replace it with another one. Now, that's a great feature, and it gives you a lot of flexibility, but you need to learn about lenses and know which ones you need and which ones you don't need, which ones to buy and which ones you probably don't need to spend that money on.
Right, and it's all based on the kind of photography that you're going to be taking
Exactly.
too. If you're not going to be sneaking up on wildlife, then maybe you don't need the ultra long telephoto,
This
right?
50-pound lens you don't need anymore.
Right.
You know? And you only have to carry it for a short distance before you start questioning whether you needed it at all.
Yeah, right.
In any case, for the traveler,
Right.
which when we go out traveling and we take all of our equipment with us, we can have a pretty big pile of stuff.
Right.
And is it all necessary? Probably not.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, if you choose wisely with your lens selection, you may not have to take more than 2 or 3 lenses.
Right.
And so this is where some of these zoom lenses come in, gives you a range, wide angle to medium telephoto, something that may be a fixed lens, like or what we call a prime lens, like that standard lens, 50 millimeters or 70 or 80 millimeters. It doesn't zoom, but it's got better quality
Right.
in terms of both in terms of aperture size. It's a faster lens, and then also in terms of the glass and so on being
The
a
zoom
little
lenses,
crisper.
because zoom lenses have moving parts, more moving parts, I should say. That is sort of an issue in terms of how well they, in terms of sharpness, or not.
Well, it can be. Most often, because the biggest downside to a zooming lens is that, as we mentioned earlier, your f-stops change as you zoom out. You get less light in. As you zoom back in, you get more light in. This is a 24-105.
Okay.
All right. So on the 24 end, in this particular case, this is a high quality lens, and because it's going from 24 to 105, it actually doesn't change the f-stop. It stays f4 all the way
Gotcha.
all the way across, which is kind of nice in some respects. Now, I would like it if it had a 2.8 f2.8 capability. It doesn't, but it stays at 1 f-stop all the way through, which
Okay.
is an important feature in some cases.
So what's a good resource to really learn about lenses and how they work? I mean, besides watching the show here.
Well, there are lots of tutorials and reviews on lenses, and
A lot of stuff online.
online, a lot of information. And, you know, if you just stop and think a little bit, I'm going on this trip. I can only carry so much stuff. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the old story. I've used it before. If you buy a shirt, and if you've got a sailboat and you buy a shirt, you got to throw a shirt away.
Right, yeah.
There's not a lot. There's not a lot of room here.
Well, the RVers know all about gross
Yeah.
vehicle weight ratings and having to make sure that they don't overload the vehicle.
Right. So you want to take as little stuff as you can and
That's
still
right.
get the job done. So choosing those lenses wisely, you may end up, as I say, with only 2 or 3 as opposed to carrying a whole
Right.
menagerie of lenses.
So you add a lens like that, you gotta probably not take the fruitcake, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to be coming back with some examples of some of the tips that we've heard today. The 5 tips for new DSL owners. We're going to show you some examples, some photos, and a little critiquing and more information coming up next on what's wrong with this picture. Today's show is brought to you by Angie's List, where you'll find thousands of unbiased reports and reviews about service companies in your area. Whether you're looking for a roofer, plumber, house cleaner, dentist, or even a doctor, Angie's List members share their experiences with each other so that you can choose the service company that's right for your job. Companies can't pay to be on Angie's List, and the reviews come from people just like you who have had experience with the companies mentioned. To find out more, go to rvnn.tv and click on the Angie's List ad.